Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, yesterday we talked about how the general in Afghanistan is being relieved and a new general is coming in. So the general that was there was General Nicholson, and General Miller is now taking his place. But what's very interesting is that General Nicholson has been telling us that we're at a stalemate. It's not moving anywhere in Afghanistan. But as he's leaving his position, he let it leak that there's been secret meetings between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Now, the U.S. is not involved in this. They're working this out together, and they're secretly negotiating a possible ceasefire. And the meetings right now are secretive, and they're talking to each other. And the talks include mid and senior level Taliban officials with the Afghanistan government, which means if they come to a deal where they have a ceasefire and they're not fighting each other, why is the U.S. there? What's the purpose of the U.S.? And here we are once again, where there's no reason for the U.S. troops to be in Afghanistan. And we're going to see how all these pieces are now starting to fall into place. And we can see how things are going to be moving forward here. And the plan is starting to show itself. Now, we know that Pompeo is meeting with North Korean officials. This is the North Korean vice chairman. He arrived in New York City, and they're talking before the summit. Now, Trump is expecting some type of letter from Kim Jong-un about the summit meeting, and he's waiting to receive it, and we'll have to see. And he's saying that this meeting is not going to be a one-off meeting. He's going to probably have to meet with Kim Jong-un many, many times. And Pompeo is also going to meet with other North Korean advisors. So that is on track, and we see all of that happening. Now, as we move forward here, and we start to talk about Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Israel, and the rest, keep in mind the whole objective is to have the troops removed from the Middle East. Now, we know that Afghanistan, there are talks going on right now, and the armed forces, the Pentagon, where Trump gave control to the Pentagon to go after the Islamic State there, they were going after the Islamic State. The same thing that was happening in Syria and Iraq, helping Russia out in these different areas. Now, we know that Russia, they did a lot of the work, and they were the first ones to come in and actually take out the Islamic State, take out Al-Qaeda, because we know that the terrorist groups, they are the paid mercenary army of the deep state. And we see already that Russia and China, they're holding joint military cooperation talks where they're going to have military drills together in different locations. So we can see that China and Russia moving closer together. They're going to have joint military drills. We see out in Afghanistan, there are secretive talks going on. And we see in Syria right now, something very interesting happening. Erdogan is going to meet with Russia's president's special representative for Syria. Erdogan is also going to have a phone call with Putin. Now, that's one meeting. We also have Israel defense minister. Well, they're going to meet with Russia's defense minister. And they're going to be talking about Syria. Very interesting. We're also going to have Pompeo and Lavrov speaking with each other. The main subject will be improved relations. They're going to be talking about Ukraine, Syria, and how they can work these things out. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, the two diplomats agreed on the need to work on overcoming existing differences through professional dialogue in the interests of normalizing the atmosphere of Russia-U.S. interaction. So right now, it's being reported that the U.S. Turkey have reached a deal for withdrawal of Kurdish forces from the key Syrian towns of Manbij. Now, the White House is saying there's no deal, there's no deal. I personally do think there is some type of deal happening in this area. And it's going back and forth. And right now, Turkey has announced a new agreement with the U.S., which will involve the pullout of all Kurdish forces from the area of Manbij. And this is the first thing that is happening here. We also hear that Assad is out there telling the world that he's going to retake the areas held by the U.S.-backed Kurds. He wants the country back. And he's saying that all foreign troops, they need to remove at this point in time. And he said we're going to deal with it using two different options. The first one, we started now opening doors for negotiations because the majority of the SDF are Syrians. Supposedly they like their country. They don't like to be puppets to any foreigners. And we would like to have discussions with them. If not, we're going to resort to liberating those areas by force. It's our land. It's our right. It's our duty to liberate it. And the Americans should leave. Somehow they're going to leave, he added. They came to Iraq with no legal basis, and look what happened to them. They have to learn the lesson. And they want the U.S. out. Now, we've been talking about how this might be possible. And Putin put it out there saying, listen, we want all foreign troops out of Syria. That's including Iran. And of course, Iran said, no way, we're never going to leave. And it would have to be left up to Assad to say to Iran, why don't you leave right now for the best interests of Syria? Has it happened yet? Not as of yet, but we're getting very close. Because right now, the U.S. with Russia, with Jordan, part of the discussion that they're having, the negotiations, is having the U.S. hand over the Al-Tanf region, handing over the base that they create, well, actually the deep state created in Syria. And this is on the border here. And Russia and the U.S. are currently negotiating in Jordan over a potential deal that would give the Syrian army full control of Al-Tanf in exchange for their troops and allies avoiding a potential conflict. And what would that mean? That would mean that the U.S. troops would leave this area. And Israel is included in this deal. And they would have assurances from Russia regarding the withdrawal of all Iranian elements from their border. Very interesting. Now, Assad is thinking about limiting Iran's access to Syria's south to restore territorial integrity. Because Assad said his main goal is to restore the integrity of Syria. And if Iran's involvement hinders this goal, it also contradicts his interests, Assad's interests. So we see already that they're moving in this direction. Now, there's a report out there saying that Iranian forces and Lebanese Hezbollah are preparing to withdraw from the southern Syrian governance. And Russia, Jordan, and U.S. are overseeing what is happening there because they're in negotiations. And it looks like Putin, who put it out there that all foreign troops should be out of there, and I think his main purpose was to remove Iran. So this way, Israel, the U.S., and the coalition forces, they will end up moving their forces out of the area. And we actually see this happening right now. So the plan is in motion right now. The pieces are falling into place where the troops most likely will start to leave Syria, because once Assad sees the troops leaving, I mean, this is how it needs to work. Once Assad moves the Iranian forces from certain areas, the coalition forces then will start to remove their forces. And it will go back and forth, and they'll come to this agreement that, yes, there's no reason for the U.S. to stay there because the Iranian forces are being removed. Russia is the body that is making sure that this is happening, and Russia is filling the gap, and they will take care of these areas. And I think this is how the U.S. is going to get out of this area. Now, Lebanon and Syria, they're already making preparations for the withdrawal of all foreign troops and for this entire war to come to an end. Because Lebanon's General Security Chief, Major General, stated that he is speaking to the Syrian government. They are working together right now, and they're going to begin the repatriation of refugees back to their homeland. There's about 1.5 million Syrian refugees that are currently living inside of Lebanon right now, and they're going to return back to Syria. And they're already putting plans together to have this happen. Now, once again, the deep state is not going to like this whatsoever, because this is undermining everything that they were trying to do for a very long time. And the whole thing is backfiring right now. Same thing in Iraq, where the Iraqi leaders, they want the U.S. out. And I think what's going to happen with Afghanistan, if you start to put all this together, it's all being orchestrated so the U.S. troops no longer need to be in these regions. It's already been worked out behind the scenes. Just like, North Korea. And we see it happening all at once. And I think this is why November 11th of this year is going to be so important. And it looks like the plan is moving in this direction. Now, this brings me back to what Soros said about needing funds from Europe to help the refugees in Africa and to bring them up into Europe to keep the open borders. Because you have to remember, if we go back in time, Turkey held a lot of the refugees from Iraq, mostly Syria and other Middle Eastern countries. And Turkey, well, they were instructed to open the gates and let the refugees flow throughout Europe. The problem now is that the refugees in the Middle East, they're all returning home. They want to return home. They don't want to leave their countries. They want to be in their country. And you can see, if they didn't want to be there, they would have gone to other places. But they're returning home, and the reporters are there. They're talking to these individuals. They're so glad to be home. They said it was a nightmare when the terrorists were in their area, when the moderate rebels, when Al-Qaeda, when the Islamic State were in their area. It was just a horrible place to live, and they had to flee. So since there are no more refugees coming out of the Middle East, how do they blend the rest of Europe? Well, you got to go to different places and get the refugees. You need to get people shipped up there. And I think this is what he's trying to do, because their plan is not working. It is all falling apart right now. And they don't know what to do at this point. And this is why, most likely, there's talks about North Korea cyber attacking the financial institutions. We know there's a huge push, and I think this is the time. And the reason why they're pushing at this time is that they have pretty much almost everything under control. Yes, there's a lot of things happening in the corporate media because all they know how to do is stir emotion, use different words like racist and things like that, and they need to keep this continually playing over and over and over and over because that's all they have. They don't have anything real to say. So they have to create these things and put it out there and get everyone emotionally charged. This is what they've done for a very long time. But the real news is that everything is falling apart for them in the background. And they're not going to let on to this like, oh, Syria, the war is ending there. There's peace. And they don't want to hear that. They don't want this to happen at all. So most likely with this Inspector General's report coming out, with what is happening out in the Middle East, what's happening out in Afghanistan, what's happening with North Korea, well, they might try something big. They might push an event. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happens pretty soon. And we also need to understand is that the Pentagon is out there saying they have no evidence of any more chemical attacks. They're putting it all out there to let everyone know there's no problems in Syria and there's no reason for the U.S. to be in there. And they're continually doing this because they want to pull the troops out. This was the plan from the beginning. This is why Trump mentioned this from the beginning. And when I talk about Trump, I'm not just talking about him as an individual. I'm talking about all the patriots that are working to make this all happen. It's not just one person. And all of this is happening at the same time. So we can expect more to happen. We can expect to see a lot more. But if you look at the corporate media, you're not going to see any of this. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of weeks we see the Al-Tanf base handed over to Syria. The Iranian forces are pushed back. Israel is happy with that. The U.S. says there's no longer to have troops in the border areas. They remove part of the troops. Unless the deep state comes along and does something to mess this all up, like they tried with North Korea many, many times, it didn't work. They might try something in Syria, just like they tried a chemical attack to try to get a war going on. But again, they were outsmarted and it went absolutely nowhere. So everyone should be on their toes because I do believe the deep state, they will try something because there's going to be a lot of news coming out and they're going to need a distraction.